In case you haven't noticed, I am not a panel, although I have put on a few extra pounds, as you might. No, we're so excited to be here today. What we're going to do is I want to chat with you a little bit about parenting and share with you 4 different stages of life that parents go through. 4 different stages of parenthood that comes from the book that Chris and I have been talking about in this series. And what I want to do on the very front end is share this very common Christian phrase I'm guessing that you've heard before. Have you ever heard the phrase, guard your heart? Raise your hands. You're like, yeah, we've heard it. It's in the Bible. Yeah, okay. Maybe that's the reason that we've heard it, but people use it in a lot of different contexts, and I think it's so good. It comes from Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, and here's what the verse actually says. It says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Now, that's a pretty big deal, because it's not saying guard your heart because then your work will be better, or guard your heart and then you'll have less stress. It's saying guard your heart because it determines everything in the course of your life. So when we hear something like that, it is pretty important for us to pay attention. And as a Christian, this would involve filtering things that we think about and feel according to the Word of God. So what does it look like to filter everything through His Word? The goal of guarding our heart is to make sure that our feelings and thoughts, they match the responses that God would have us do. The actions that God gives us as we carry out our lives. And that's what guarding your heart is. And we see this throughout the Bibles in different ways. There are people who didn't do a very good job of this. We see a number of times that people would search out and seek material things and then end up in a spot where they hadn't guarded their heart. Or we would see people desire sexual things and push themselves to a spot where they weren't supposed to be. And as a result, they didn't guard their heart. We see characters in the Bible who struggled with fear of what they needed to do and what God was calling them to do next. And as a result, their heart, it wasn't guarded. And it can be tricky for us to guard our heart because it is one thing to do that as an individual, but we also have the challenge to guard our hearts as a family in each stage of what we end up parenting. And Proverbs 4, it doesn't just talk about this one verse that says, guard your heart, it's just for you as an individual. It has a ton of stuff to share throughout chapter 4. Let me just read a few of the things that we see in chapter 4 that give us just great advice. Chapter 4, verse 4 says, my father taught me, take my words to heart, follow my commands, and you will live. If you want to live, follow my commands. This is a big deal. Don't miss that one. Verse 14, don't do as the wicked do. And don't follow the path of the evildoers, right? This is good. As a parent, you're like, what can I do to make sure that my kids don't follow the path of evil, right? You're like, whether or not they behave the way we want, I don't know. Let's just make sure our kids aren't evil. Everybody can agree that would not be the goal of parenthood. Raise an evil child. Verse 23, we read, guard your heart. It determines the course of your life. And then we have verse 25. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Verse 26, mark out a straight path for your feet and stay on a safe path. Verse 27, don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. It is so important in the role of a parent to help make sure that we keep our feet from following evil. And in this book that we've been basing this series on, there are 4 different stages of parenthood that are outlined. The first stage that we have is the stage of discipline. Maybe you've felt this stage. It is from 0 to 5, and in the stage of discipline, you teach consequences of good and bad. Maybe you've already been through this. You're like, man, it seems like that is every stage we need to be doing that. Yes, I understand, for sure. Then we have the stage that comes next. It is the stage of training from 5 to 12 years old. And while you train, you explain. So you don't just tell your child what to do or why we do what, you tell them why it's important. You train and explain. And then we have the coaching years. This goes from 12 to 18 years old. You connect more than you correct in the coaching years. Now, some of you are saying, no, it seems like we still do a lot of correcting in the coaching years. Have you ever had a teenager? I understand, that's a huge challenge. But in the coaching years, you connect more than you correct. You remember that the coach doesn't leave the field. I love that analogy. Because sometimes you think in this season of where we connect to our kids in that spot, what does it look like to leave the field? Oh, let them make their own decisions. Let them decide stuff on their own. We know that we have a challenge to stay right in it with our kids through everything that they're going through. And then the fourth phase that the book talks about is the friendship years. Some of you are in this and you feel that you begin to see the fruit of your work. You put in a lot of hard work for a lot of years, and now you get to see whether or not it's stuck. Yeah, best of luck. You also see that you are disconnected from a lot of the small decisions that you've been connected to for most of your time as a parent. And the 4 stages of parenting, they help parents know how to guard their heart, because their responsibility isn't just to do it personally, but to do it for their family. And understanding each of these stages will help your child develop and help make sure that as a parent that your pride doesn't get in the way of your parenting. We've all seen parents who are off on their stages just a little bit, and it's kind of fun to laugh at sometimes, right? It's not fun when you're in it, but it's fun to laugh at sometimes. Maybe they're jumping to discipline when they need to be coaching a kid. And everybody around's like, man, I think they're a little too old to discipline their kid like that. I remember a story of my sister who's 5 years younger than me. She got in trouble from my mom. My mom was not happy with her. She decided to punish her by spanking, and so she rolled up this newspaper and reared back and spanked her, and my sister started laughing. It was a really bad situation in our house. She started laughing, and then she started fake crying because she knew that this could only get worse if she didn't feel punishment from this spanking. Here's the thing. Was that right or wrong? I don't know. But she was a little bit past that stage of discipline in that moment. They take a friendship approach. Have you seen this? Parents who take a friendship approach with a kid who's a little bit too young. They start to treat them like a peer, and you're like, well, this isn't going to work out for you the way that you think it's going to. Or maybe you've seen people confuse the coaching stage with the friendship stage. Their kids are beginning to pull away and make decisions on their own, and the parent doesn't realize that they don't have the voice that they used to have anymore. It's a tough stage to be in for sure. No matter what stage of parenthood you're in, just know that we as a church are never alone when you are struggling in how to help guard the heart of your kids. When you're struggling in how to help parent them. And maybe some of you are like, oh, really? We're talking about parenting for a second week in a row. I don't even have any kids. I get it. Here's the thing. We as a church help raise the next generation. And so whether you're in a stage where you don't have any kids or you're like, I'm never going to have any kids, know that you have a role in helping bring up the next generation, because there are parents in here who feel like they are alone. And they're not alone when we're with them. In the discipline years, 0 to 5, we see and hear examples of people in our church who have gone through that stage before us, and it makes us feel a little bit better about what we're going through. Amen? You're like, okay, someone else wrestled with this, and their kid lived. They didn't go down the path of evil. I think we'll be okay, right? You see this and you're encouraged, because it can be overwhelming as a first-time or a first-time parent of 2 or 3 or whatever stage you're in to see and be right in the middle of it. To know, am I even doing the right thing? Mentally, you might have the plan in place, but functionally, it just doesn't always work out, does it? And if that's the season that you're in, I hope that you can learn from best practices of other people who are around you in your church community. I want you to know that when you are struggling and we see it, that you're receiving empathy from people who have already gone through that stage. Am I right? When we see and know, like, how in the world do they do that with such a little one? That parent is here, and I know they didn't sleep last night. What is going on? Whatever stage you feel like you're in and you're alone, you are not alone when you are a part of a church community. And being involved in the community is the best way to receive the benefits from those gifts. So whenever you're in that first stage and you feel like I don't have time to be involved in anything, know that there's a church community that wants to come around you. They want to help you. You might be convinced that there's no time in this rut, but there are other people in the church who want to help you in the raising of your kid. With the training years, 5 to 12, we talked about this a little bit. Remember in the training years that as you see other people do this, that they will begin to have a voice in your kid's life. It is really, really scary to know that there are people in this room who will have a voice in the raising of your kid. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes parents can misunderstand that and go, well, I don't know if I want Johnny to influence my kid. Yeah, I get it. But here's the thing. Your kid is going to be influenced by voices. So what does it look like to bring other people who share the same truth about who God is to be able to pour in and speak into your kid's life? It's so important for us to have, because the faith isn't something you want to feel like you're forcing on your kids, although you have a responsibility to help guide them in the path of where they go. And when there are other people around who are saying, your parents aren't crazy in what they're doing, or when they see their peers making the same decision, it helps them, it helps reaffirm that there is something that you are doing that isn't just on your parents. It is something that you're doing together. Chris shared last week with us, we get the question a lot, should we make our kids come to church? What are we supposed to do in this spot? Know this. It is your job to help point them towards Jesus, and it is your job to help impact them to understand and see who he is, to give them clarity in their faith journey. But there are people in your church community who want to help you in that path, who want to help share different pieces, because there will be days when they quit listening to you. There will be days when you're like, can someone else say the same thing that I'm saying? I think about these cinder blocks here. They're real wrapped up and pretty, but I think about this. If this represents the influence of our kids that we hold, think about this. Do you think that this stick can hold the tension of my weight? You're wondering, Patrick, what are you weighing in these days? I'm over 300 pounds. I'll say, yeah, it's a little bit tricky, and it's rolly too, so I don't know. A lot of parents, what they do is they go, I can control what my kid knows about Jesus. I can control anything bad happen to them, and it puts tension on them. And the reality is, maybe you can for a certain season, but there will become a day when your kid faces tension that they just can't bear anymore. And as a parent, it'll snap, right? I hope that this isn't you, but many of you are sitting here going, I have felt the tension and I need help. So check this out. Let's throw that over there. If this is the parenthood stick, which I didn't mean that to be like the rod of discipline or anything, you know. You are meant to have other people who are speaking the truth of Jesus in the lives of your kids. And so as you do this, when you face tense times, maybe you can bear a lot of stuff on your own, but when you face tense times, there is a community that wants to come around you. Maybe we need a little bit more community. Woo! You know the fear that the people in the Bible felt? That's what I feel right now on these rolly sticks. Please survive, please survive. That is better balance than I thought I would have. You see the tension that doesn't break when you have people around you? This is what God has created the church for, even in its imperfection, to display the hope of Jesus. Then we run into the coaching years. Maybe you're right in this, the teenage years as they're called. 17 years in youth ministry, I have seen a lot of parents do a lot of awesome things to help coach their kids in these years. And here's what I'll share. Sometimes parents get it wrong, and they think that their kid will never stop listening to them, that their voice will always matter, and they might be right a lot of the time. But hundreds of times, I have seen a conflict between a parent and a kid cause a kid to quit listening to their parent. Maybe this goes for all of middle school, all of high school. Maybe it goes for a whole semester, a month, a week. Maybe it's just a day. But the role of the community is to come around your family so that when your kid stops listening to you, that someone else can still point them to Jesus. This is the goal of this season. And in the coaching years, you need this so much. You need other prevalent voices that point your kid to Jesus when they stop listening to you. And I'm not saying that they stopped listening to you because they should or they shouldn't. The reality is, parents, there's a lot of dumb things we do and a lot of right things that we do, but God has put us in the role to help guide our kids. But we're not supposed to do this alone. Then we jump to the friendship stage, right? 18 plus. And in the book that I shared with you that we're basing some of these conversations with, in that stage of life, they share that the goal of parenthood is to make your kid like you when they leave, to make them still love to have a relationship with you when they don't have to. It's like choosing friendship with their parents instead of just being obedient to the things that you make them do because they have no choice. This is a noble goal because there will be things that get in the way and try to distract you on your way as you get there. And as we guard the hearts of our kids and move them towards obedience, I want to just share a few little thoughts. And we have a panel today that's going to talk. Come on up, panel. I'm going to invite them up as I share these additional thoughts. You might want to write these down. Maybe they're not as good as I think, but as they come up, I want to share. Pursuing Jesus will have a lasting impact on your kids. You're pursuing Jesus and they're pursuing Jesus will have a lasting impact on your kids. They'll be the number one thing that they can do. So build in voices that help point your kids towards Jesus in everything you do. And although the responsibility of raising your kid has been given to you, there's a community that wants to help point them to Jesus. Even though you might feel alone sometimes, you are not alone in the responsibility to raise your kids in relationship with him. The next thing I want to share is your marriage should not be ignored for the sake of parenting. When you help point people towards what that healthy marriage looks like, you cultivate a relationship, not just with you guys, but with Jesus as well. And even though you as a parent might feel like you don't have enough, there's people who want to help you. And if you're in here today going, I am not a parent, you have a role in helping raise the next generation in Jesus. So let's chat for a little bit. Welcome, panel. So excited to have you guys here. These guys are here because they said that they're perfect parents and they wanted to sign up. They said, oh, someone needs to be a perfect parent? I think I should stand on stage. No, their only commonality is that I begged them and they said, okay. That's where they're at. But I want to just give quick introductions, if I can, really quick, so we can get into some of the questions that really matter. Morgan's, we'll go here. Sam and Noel. Can you tell how many kids you have? And
we've got four boys, 9, 11, right? No, 15 and 17, and this is not from the rod of discipline, just so you know.
So you're in a couple different stages of parenting right now. Yep. Kathy Wright, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. My kids are all in the friendship stage, 38, 34, and 32, and I've got 5 grandchildren, 7, 5, 3, and twin grandboys.
Oh, very cool.
10 months old.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Sherielle.
Hi, I'm Sherielle. Together with my husband, we have 3, almost 4 children. We have 3-year-old twins, a 20-month-old son, and we're 7 months pregnant.
I told you this earlier, but my number one fear in my 20s was having twins. I was
My
like, how could
husband
I
too.
afford that? Your husband too? Ron, good to see you, man. Yeah, very cool. Thanks, Sherielle.
We have 5 children, 20 up to 29, and 4 grandsons, 6, 4, 2, and 1.
Corwin and Stacey Pauley, thank you. Thank you for being here. I mean, I said everybody else's name. I messed up. Give me a break. It's like parenting, right? Sometimes you mess up. What I want to do is I want to just jump in and share a little bit. If you can share, what is one of the greatest challenges you feel in this stage of parenting? In this stage of parenting, wherever you're at. Some of you are in the friendship stage. Some of you are in the discipline stage. All over. You guys are in a couple stages. What's the biggest challenge that you've felt right now in this stage?
I said this first service, but with adult, all our kids are adult. We've got one still in the house. She's over my left shoulder right now. But we are watching our older kids raise our grandkids. And guess what? They do it different than we do it. And our job is not to step in at that and say, hey, you're doing it different, but to just be there for them. So.
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks for sharing.
I'm in the same stage, and I just have to remind myself to be the encourager, because sometimes I tell myself, just be quiet, don't watch. But if I can be an encourager, that just helps, help them raise their kids.
Yeah, really good.
We're in that discipline stage, and for us, it's being outnumbered. We are quite a bit outnumbered, and being reminded that we are on the right course, and just to continue on.
Yep. Yeah, you've gone from man-to-man defense to zone defense, and I don't know what you call the next phase when new baby comes. Yeah, still zone too. Yeah, Morgan's?
For us, I would say one of our biggest challenges right now is the balance of technology with their technology needs versus their technology wants.
Yeah.
That's been a big challenge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting as we talk a little bit about guarding your heart, because as parents, we don't just do that individually. We have to do that on behalf of our family, and sometimes needs and wants come to play a little bit. So I'm curious if a few of you could just take a second and answer, what have you done to help guard the heart of your kids that you feel like, hey, that's been successful? At least from my perspective, that's been a successful way that I help guard my kid's heart.
So I can't speak. I shared earlier, Noelle has really been phenomenal about this with our kids. And so it started as an early age doing devotionals every evening with them. Our oldest just graduated about a week ago. And so one of the things that I really admire is even I can remember it was his very last final, she still prayed with him before going to school. And so the power and the importance of prayer is absolutely, I think, absolutely critical as a parent. And so, when you think about that as a military individual, I think of it as an offensive weapon. It's a precise weapon. It's a precision weapon. It can strike deep into enemy territory, and it can strike across generations. And so I think there's a huge amount of power in that as we parent.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's an interesting thing that you share there, because you're talking about how prayer has the impact to go deeper than even what it seems like on the surface. And there are people in this room going, I'm the only one who prays for my kid in my marriage. I'm the only one in my household who's praying for that. But don't be discouraged, because it goes deep into enemy territory and does big things down the road. So, and also studying the original Hebrew in your devos every night too, right? Yeah, okay. Very cool. Very cool. What else? Guarding your heart.
I think just encouraging them with what they take in and the movies and things. We encourage them to look at Plugged In, which talks about the different what's in a movie, so that you can decide if it's something that you want to watch or not, and our kids still use that.
Yeah. You taught it to them when they were younger, and they're using it as adults now. Yeah. Yep.
And one of the things that we tried to do, we used a sports analogy. So, we had little people for a long time, and we would attempt to keep them from being exposed to things beyond their years. And in first service, there was a 7-year-old boy sitting down here, and I said, if he was playing football, he wouldn't play football against Patrick and I or some professional linebacker. He'd be playing against 6-year-olds. And we treated it the same way with the content that we allowed into our homes. So we didn't just allow movies and television that was beyond their years, because we didn't want to keep them in a cave, because we knew they'd be exposed, but we didn't want to overexpose them too early. So I would encourage you guys to consider that as well.
Real wise thoughts. Yeah, you got something, Shariel?
Yeah, I would say with small children is to guard your own heart. Be careful of the things that you're taking in and watching, listening to, because they are watching and they're also absorbing those things and will duplicate them at your surprise. And so be careful. Guard your heart.
Yeah, that's so good. You want to share any thoughts?
I was just thinking, when we think guard your own heart or guard your hearts, there's truth. And we need to stand with that. We need to not be ashamed to stand by the Word of God and to promote that in our children's lives.
Yeah, that's very good. There's challenge in each season of whether or not you can share that and what that looks like. And I was kind of wondering, you talk about what we're promoting, what we're representing, the example that we set. What role have you guys found that marriage plays in how you help raise your kids and help them guard their hearts? I'll put this to the couples on stage right now. Yep.
Accountability. Not that I ever overreacted to my kids. I got 8 of their beady eyes staring at me somewhere out there. But accountability, right? And so, not necessarily in front of the kids, but, offering constructive criticism to one another, or sometimes we have blind spots, and so it's helpful to have a partner that can help you see those blind spots very lovingly and to improve.
Yeah.
I think also along those lines is being a united front. Like, we might not agree with what the other one says or does in the moment, but we don't point that out in front of the kids. We do it later.
Now they know.
Now they know. Whoops.
Now they know. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, marriage is the foundation. So especially now as our children are mostly gone, it's just us left. So we want to foster that relationship. And what else did I want to say? I don't either. Oh, well, Corwin was gone with the military at times, but just his support, his prayers, his encouragement, and knowing that he was there through all that still meant the world.
Yeah, and I agree with Stacy. If you remember that the relationship of husband and wife is first and foundational and will last beyond when your students, your children leave, then it's easier for you to look at that as that key foundational relationship, and you love each other and you express that, and then your mom and dad. But that husband-wife relationship comes first, and that defines the house, because when they're gone, you're going to be together, and that's a good thing. So.
We before you guys popped up, we talked a little bit about you're not alone, even when you feel like you're alone. Yet, even though we said that, I know that there's people in this room who go, nope, still feel alone. I know I'm sitting around people on a row really close. I can smell them and hear what they're eating, but I still feel like I'm alone. Can you speak to the role that the church has played in your kiddos, how they've come around you guys as parents and helping raise your kids and help them guard their heart?
I'll share. We have twins, as I mentioned. They're 3 years old. They are fraternal, and they are complete opposites. Our youngest twin, her name is Shiloh. If you ever catch us after service, you'll see one of us often running after her. And there was a woman that is in her classroom, and she had approached me one day and said, I really love that Shiloh is in the classroom with me. She just brings deep joy to my Sundays. And I had been praying about that because Shiloh she's all of me. She could be a handful at times, but she's such a blessing. And I want to ensure that people, never get exhausted. I'm her mother, but I get exhausted too. But God reminded me in that moment that he is intentional, and he has people around that are intentional with our children, and that he is being specific in who he brings around. And so it's the church family that I lean so deeply upon to help raise our children and even help to guide me when I'm kind of veering off or unsure of the path I'm on.
And God is using your children to bring joy to other people as well. That's really cool. Yep.
I've been here a long time, so I've seen the church come into my life, even from the very beginning when Kendra was just little. The organist would say, hey, I'll watch your kid while you go. You have to do that. You have to do that. But I think what's most valuable to me is when people are around me, from a Bible study when they were little to, and my daughter comes running out, look at what I did. I cut that little girl's hair. Wonderful, Kendra. No. But, you have those ladies around you, and later it's been couples around us to just encourage and help us go through those times that are just challenging. And you just need that. You just want that encouragement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good.
Our young people had youth leaders that one would meet with them periodically. One in particular that stayed with my daughter through high school and just really was a blessing to her, and asking her, how are things with your parents? How are things at school?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
appreciate that.
That's cool.
And one other thing, I've got some friends that I was stationed with multiple times, and it's great to hear that the guys that were like-minded, that the couples that were like-minded with us still reach out to our kids and have them over for dinner when they're in the area, or just shoot them text messages of encouragement. So again, coming together as a church body, a church family to support one another, can't say how important that is.
Yeah. Morgan's final thoughts?
As a military family, we've moved a lot, and I think one of our first priorities is always to find a church, and that's part of it. I mean, every church we've been at, and especially Cornerstone, the older men, young men that have poured into our boys, the women in the children's ministry too, has been incredibly important for them to hear other people say the same things we're saying and pointing them to Jesus. And we've been really blessed with having Corwin not only in our church but at school with Sam too, and that's a pretty awesome connection. All the connections here have been really important for our children.
That's cool. That's really cool. So I wanna sit here for the next couple hours and just listen to you guys talk about parenthood, if that's okay. So buckle in, grab a snack from the No. Closing thoughts. There is a lot of times in parenthood where you feel like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do next. I am in the middle of this season and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What encouragement would you give to people in the season that you're currently in this room? What tips and encouragement would you give to people who are in the same season that you're in right now?
One of the things that when the kids were little, I would always focus on the family every morning. I just wanted that tone in. I want to make sure I'm hearing everything that I should be doing, I would advise you to do the same thing. There are a multitude of resources like that with Family Life Today, with Focus on the Family, with Family Institute. There are just podcasts and radio episodes that recommend resources that are resources themselves. I really have benefited from that over the years.
Yeah, we watch what our kids take in, but we fail to take in stuff that helps change our heart and guard our heart in order to parent them as well. Yeah. Good word.
I would say we were really encouraged by when we were dedicating the twins here, the Pollies. There's a little video that you watch prior to dedication and gave really encouraging words. And to summarize it, it means to just bring your 5 loaves and 2 fishes. God will make the increase. And so being sure that, you show up with those things and know that God will breathe on those, and there'll be enough in your parenthood to ensure that your children are, knowing who God is.
Yeah, that's good.
I think we're talking about relationships, and so what comes to mind for me is, how do you forge trust? And sometimes you've got to make yourself vulnerable, even to your children at certain ages. And so having that willingness, vulnerability, like, hey, I made a mistake, and being apologetic about it. And likewise, if they come to you, exposing themselves, whether it's a weakness or something they're struggling with, how you judgmental you come across, or how you come across to them, coming across lovingly and respectful of them as well, I think is extremely important.
Having kids in a couple different stages, would you say that that's different from stage to stage in the way that you show vulnerability?
Yes. Yeah. That was the easiest answer I was able to.
Works for me. Works for me. Good to hear. Cool. Closing thoughts?
I was just going to say, don't do it alone. Early on, I just was an islander, and it's no fun that way. So it's better to be in a group and have friends and have people praying for your children as well as you are. So. Yep.
And keep at it, even when it feels like this doesn't work. I tried a little bit. Just keep at it. It's important. Yep.
So I will encourage all of you. We are definitely the most imperfect parents in this room right now. Every one of you is going to make a mistake. Some of you have made it this morning already. If not, as a parent, you'll make it later today. Mm-hmm. And if you get through one day, it'll be tomorrow. So we all make those errors. It's God's grace that filters those errors and takes it out of our children's minds as we seek to be more like Christ. God does some miraculous works in our kids' memories and wipes certain memories away. So that there can be those relationships in the future of friendship. And so I would encourage you, again, like Sam said, if you need to apologize to your kids, do it. You can ask Sarah. I've done it more times than I can count, several times this week. So again, it's worth those times.
Thanks for sharing, Paulies. Hey, can you give it up for these guys? I'd like to pray for the room. We have parents, and then we have people going, I don't know how I fit in, helping take the next generation take their next step. But know that you're not alone. God wants to use you, and he does big things in what we bring to him to be used for his purpose. Dear Jesus, we thank you for this day, God. I thank you for people in this room. Man, I look around and see there are just so many good parents sitting and so many good parents up here. God, I just pray that you help those people work together in raising just the next generation of people who love you and lead for you everywhere that they go. God, we thank you that even when we mess up, that the church is the hope of you. And we pray that even when it's imperfect, that we can see the full picture of that. God, help us grow in community. Help us as you've given us a big role to impact kids. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.